My name is Riki Moss, and I'm really pleased and honored to be here. Thank you all. I can't talk about the pandemic yet. I just can't. It feels like any process happening now is so compressed in this timescape that I'm too much in it to talk about it. So what I'm going to do is just talk about some process, looking at pieces basically from the past. I am a bi person in the sense that I work in materials and I work in words. So I'm a writer and a sculptor. And this is one of the defining pieces of sculpture that I came up with my partner. It's made out of abaca paper. And what the process here really showed me that what I do is a dance between call and response. And what happens is that I'm listening somehow to something and I hear something and it takes my interest and I go for it. And I have to make a decision then if I'm going to be obsessed by it or if I'm going to let it go. And I realize that there's a tremendous amount of work ahead if I do choose to do it. But I also realize that it's kind of an angel sitting on my shoulders, giving me this moment of an art gift. And if I don't take it, somebody else will take it and they're going to go get a Guggenheim and I am not, or something like that. So what happened here is that this paper is called abaca and it has a very high shrinkage rate. And it shrinks against anything that is embedded in it. And it creates its own form as it dries. The shrinkage is very, very high. Took a long time to learn all this. We set up a studio in Vermont, going back and forth from Boston to Vermont for a certain amount of time. And the lesson here was learning that you needed to know your material so well that you trusted it and you weren't imposing upon it something that wasn't natural for it. So there was this idea of the call of what the material was and how do we respond to it. And what we did was take many really years learning what happened as the material dried and what kind of structure you could create with it. It ended up in lighting. We made a product. We liked paying the bills. It was really fun. But at the same time, I don't like repetition. So we started working in a different way as well. So here, I started making armatures outside of the paper and ask myself what would happen when the paper shrank around it, what would happen? And what happened was that it forms a skin. It picks up every nuance in the armature and it just glows. It's amazing. You can peel it back, you can write on it, you can draw on it, you can do nothing. And you can add parts that are molded with the paper or with little bits of plaster or something. The idea behind these pieces was that there was an archaeology in the soil and that buried in this was the whole history of our planet, our civilization, and that there were parts of DNA and parts of creatures that were not yet formed and maybe never would be. Maybe were bad ideas, maybe were great ideas that just weren't part of the evolution of things. So that's what I was playing with here. And what happened was something like 100 pieces that incorporated parts of trees and parts of the landscape, maybe some video, and it became what I would call a parade. And it was a parade of life, of these curious life forms, and it was set up in different ways in different places. Then the BCA at some point invited me to their Land and Local exhibition. And I took up a residency at the Grand Isle State Park for this in the summer, working with kids and visitors in the park. And the idea was to be inspired by a park and to bring it to an exhibition months later at Shelburne Farms. So obviously I needed something that would withstand the weather. And I was standing at the edge of the lake for a long time looking at it. And I started thinking about Moby Dick. I started thinking about Ishmael looking at water watchers as he stared across the river to Manhattan. And I thought, well, I'll make him a couple more. So I did. These are made out of hydrocal and resin. They're about 7 feet, 6 to 7 feet tall. And the little animal is like dog sized. They have parts of tree and parts of cast materials in there as well. And they're built over fencing and foam. The video was something I had no idea. I'd never done any video, but I needed to define the space. And so with help from friends, I got this together, and probably will never do another one again, but who knows? So meanwhile, as I said, I had this sort of dual life of writing and sculpture. And the reason was that I was really into writing a lot, but I couldn't sit still. I needed to break up the day by doing something that was physical. Meanwhile, I was writing, and I got this book, An Obese White Gentleman in No Apparent Distress. It came out in 2 versions. And I edited a book called It's a Lot Like Dancing, which was an Aikido book done with a Aikido photographer that came out. And then this last thing was populating a magazine called On Psychology with visual forms that, with these little creatures, images populating the pages. And that was a surprise. I wasn't ready for that. And it was something from the past, but it was fun to do. This is a detail from some of the old paperwork, and it's a head of a branch or a tree with a snake wound around it and a mask. I was doing masks with the paper at the same time. And I think of this as a self-portrait. I think that this is as close to a self-portrait as I've ever done. And I keep it around because I think there's a spirit in there that I'd like to somehow manage to keep going in whatever work that I do. So to sort of sum it up, it's always a call and response for me. I hear something, I respond, and I never want to make a definite statement. I want the viewer or the reader to be able to come to their own trip, their own travel through this journey and share it with me. That's it, and thank you so much. I'm just so pleased to be here among all you beautiful people. Thank you.